Hello and welcome to everyone. I'm Hayla Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us for the third panel of our 2025 Writers Summit. The Atmosphere Press Writers Summit is a completely free and entirely virtual two-day writers conference where you, the attendee, have the opportunity to connect with fellow writers who are serious about their publishing goals. Whether you're preparing your manuscript, exploring your publishing options, or figuring out how to promote your book once it's out in the world, this summit features 8 digestible sessions that will give you real, practical insights from industry experts. In these sessions, we'll be hearing from published Atmosphere Press authors, learning about book coaching and marketing strategies, and discovering how Atmosphere Press can support you at every stage of the process. In this panel, we'll be talking about the importance of working with a book coach prior to submitting your manuscript, as well as the opportunity of becoming a book coach yourself after becoming a published author with our guest, Jennie Nash. In a competitive industry where your manuscript is competing against thousands of others, a book coach can help your book stand out from the crowd. Jennie knows this well as the CEO of Author Accelerator, a service matching writers with book coaches. You'll also have the opportunity for Jennie to answer your questions during the Q&A portion of the event. So at any time, please do use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions. You can also check the Answered tab also in that Q&A box to see answers to questions that have already been posed. Just for attendees of this panel, I also want to let you know about 2 giveaways we're hosting. First, every single attendee of this panel will receive the Business of Book Coaching Startup Kit, which is a 40-page guide to get you started down the path of book coaching. And second, we'll have 1 free digital copy of Jennie's book, Read Books All Day and Get Paid for It, The Business of Book Coaching, available to win. The latter winner will be selected at random, and I'll announce that winner at the end of Jennie's panel. And one more thing before we get into her talk. This panel is brought to you by the Launchpad, Atmosphere Press's very own newsletter. The Launchpad goes out to 60,000 subscribers twice a week with information about Atmosphere's team and services, announcements about new initiatives, and access to limited time offers. We also provide access to recordings of our live events via editions of the Launchpad. You can subscribe to the Launchpad at the link in the chat, and once subscribed, you'll have access to all those exciting opportunities, and you'll always be up to date on the state of the press. With that, I am thrilled to introduce our guest speaker. Jennie Nash is the founder and CEO of Author Accelerator, a company on a mission to lead the emerging book coaching industry. And she's the author of 12 books in 3 genres, including the Blueprint for a Book series, which teaches a framework for laying a strong foundation for a novel, memoir, or nonfiction book. Author Accelerator has trained over 300 book coaches through their Book Coach certification program. Jennie's own book coaching clients have landed top agents, 6-figure book deals, and spots on the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller lists. For a free training on becoming a book coach or becoming a book coach, you can visit bookcoaches.com/coaches. And to find an Author Accelerator certified book coach to help you write your best book, visit www.authoraccelerator.com/matchme. And now we'll hear from Jennie herself.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here to support this summit and Atmosphere Press. I just love what Atmosphere is doing. A lot of our book coaches work with writers who want to publish with Atmosphere, and so we have a really nice symbiotic relationship there. So it's fun to be here to talk to you. I wanted to start out by talking about what a book coach even is, because you may have never heard of it and don't know how it might help you. So you want to submit your best work when you submit to a publisher. You want to give yourself the best possible chance of being selected to be published. And also, you want to give the team at a press, the editors and proofreaders, and everyone who's going to put that book into production, you want to give them the best material to work with. So, that point of knowing when your book is ready and when you're ready is a really critical point. And what a book coach does is works with the writer before they get to that point. So, a developmental editor comes in when the work is finished to line edit and clean it up and make it the best that it can be. But a book coach is going to be there over time as a sounding board, an accountability partner to make sure you get the work done. We're going to be there to give you emotional support and to make sure that you're doing the best work that you possibly can. It's really actually quite difficult to assess your own work. It's hard to see your blind spots and where your weaknesses are, and to make things the best that they can be. Having somebody give you regular feedback and consistent feedback that you can trust is just a huge boost to writing something that you're going to be proud of. The thing that you probably all know and feel is that when you publish a book, it's done. You can't go back in there and fix it or fiddle with it, or say, oh, I actually wanted to do this instead, or I could have done this better. You want something you can be wholly proud of and that you can get behind, because you're going to be talking about this book for a long time. You're going to be talking to your readers, you're going to be talking to reading groups and book clubs, and depending on what genre you're writing in, you might be giving workshops around the ideas in this book, or out there giving talks and things, and you want to be proud of what you put out there. And so working with a book coach is a really powerful way of making sure that you're doing your very best work and that you're ready to work with the team at somebody like Atmosphere. So that's what a book coach is, and what we do. And sometimes people ask me, well, when is the best time to bring a book coach into your writing process? And there are two answers that I have. I think there are two very powerful places to bring a book coach into the work. The first is before you even start writing. If you're thinking about writing a book, or you have an idea, or maybe you've written a few chapters but you're stuck, working with the book coach is such a great thing to do at that stage, because you can think about why you're writing, who you're writing for, who your ideal reader is and your audience. You can work out every bit of the plot if you're writing fiction, and make sure your twists are right and your reveals are good, and that you're meeting the genre conventions that your readers are going to expect. On the memoir side, you can make sure that you've got the right container for your story, that you've chosen the right period of time, and that you're picking the right stories to make the message that you want to make. And on the nonfiction side, starting at that point before you've even started to write, you can really work out, what do I want to teach my reader? What transformation do I want to bring them through in this nonfiction work? What do I want to show them or teach them or lead them to? And you can get that really locked down. So working with a book coach at that stage is an excellent way to begin. Another really good place to work with a book coach is when you think you're ready to submit, but you're not quite sure. The question of what is good enough and what is ready is one that every writer wrestles with. Writers tend to be people who, well, there's two things. We either procrastinate because, we think that, well, we want to get every word right and every line right and everything right, and we don't actually let the work go into the world. We fuss too much, we hold on to it too tightly, and we never get to the place where we're ready to go. That can be very frustrating for a writer, that perfectionist loop. And then the other thing that happens at that stage of questioning whether or not you're ready to submit is the opposite, which is rushing. It's like, well, I got one draft done, or I got one revision done, and I'm itching to get this out into the world, so I'm just going to call it done and move along. And what a book coach can do is help you assess whether you really are ready. Is there more that you can do? Is there a way that you can make this better? Have you turned over every stone in service of making this work the best that you can be? And are you, on that opposite side, are you going in circles? Is it time to submit and let it go out into the world? So that's a really powerful time to work with a book coach as well. And you do have to be, in terms of the coachability, I guess is what I would say. You have to be ready, willing, and able to bring somebody into your work with you. So that means you have to be ready to trust what they might say and trust that you have what it takes to assess the feedback. You're not working with a book coach is not doing what they say. It's listening to what they say and listening to their feedback and then helping yourself to determine and discern, do I agree? Do I like this? Do I want to make the changes that they're suggesting? Do I think that would make my work better? Is that a hole that I see in the work? Is that something I know I was trying to get away with? I was trying to sort of cheat and hope that nobody would notice. But actually, this book coach did notice, so I guess I better address it. There has to be a willingness and an openness to discuss the work and really get in it with the professional. And the reason that this whole process is just so effective is you get somebody paying total attention to your work. You're not trading for their time, which you do when you're working with either a critique partner or a beta reader. Critique partners and beta readers are awesome, and there is a place for them and there is a time for them for sure. But the idea of having somebody paying total attention to you and what you're doing, and that they're in it with you and they want the best for you, that's what can be so amazing. And then they can help you determine that it's time to submit, that you're ready, that you're going to turn over to the Atmosphere team the very best raw material. I mean, it's not raw at that point. It's quite on its way to being fully cooked. But you're turning over the best material that you can for them to have their professionals then come in and do the line edits and the proofreading and the work that's going to get it ready for production, for actually, publishing. So that is a quick and fast and dirty overview of what a book coach does and how it works and what you can expect. I could talk all day about this, but I'm going to see if there are any questions or things that I could talk about more specifically that people want to hear about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for starting us off with that overview, Jenny. I think it's great to get an understanding before we dive into this Q&A. So for that Q&A, just a reminder that if you have a question for Jenny, you can go ahead and type those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to do our best to get to you as many as we can. We've already got a number of questions coming in. So this first one is, what are the genres that book coaching is most useful for?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think there is a genre where a book coach is not awesome for. They can help with any genre whatsoever, and you can find a book coach who specializes in whatever it is that you're writing. So that one's easy. All genres.
Perfect. So no matter what kind of super broad audience you're writing for or super narrow niche audience, it sounds like you can benefit from book coaching. This question is for you personally. How did you, Jenny, get into book coaching originally?
Well, I was a writer and I was a mid-list writer, which means I was neither a beginning debut writer or a big best-selling writer. I was sort of just in the middle, which is where a lot of writers end up being. And I was doing well in that space. It's a space a lot of people want to get to, and they're happy to get to. But I began teaching after writing several books, and I was teaching at the UCLA Writers Program. And I got very frustrated with the way that writing is taught. The classroom is not the best situation for teaching a writer. The writer doesn't get the attention that they need or the time that they need. They want somebody reading their pages and helping them understand if what they're writing is landing and doing what they want it to do. And the instructor in that situation just simply doesn't have the time to give to each one of those writers. So I was feeling this deep frustration about the teaching process and the way that writing is generally taught. And at that time, I had the opportunity, one of my colleagues asked me to coach them on a book. She was a agent and a brilliant story analyst and wanted to write a book about writing. It was all very meta. So she asked me to help her from zero. And I was able to start creating the methods and strategies and processes that I would use if I had the chance to work with a writer exactly the way I wanted to work with them. And that was when I started developing my blueprint process and this method of inquiry of asking the writer what they're really wanting to do, that very beginning stage I was speaking of. And that writer turned out to be Lisa Cron, who wrote Wired for Story and Story Genius, which launched her into a whole different stratosphere of her career, became beloved books in the writing space, and then launched me in my career as a book coach. And I began to take those processes and systems and use them with a lot of clients who met with a lot of success. And it just sort of went from there. And I found that I just absolutely adored the work of book coaching. I love being in the creative process with a writer and wrestling with the material and helping them to really articulate what they're trying to do and then to discern if they're doing it. So I just fell in love with the work, and then I started Author Accelerator, and now we're in our 12th year of business. So it became my whole life's work.
Well, it's so wonderful that, I mean, you can really hear the passion that you have for the work as you're talking about it. So I think that's so wonderful that that comes across so clearly. Kind of a related question. I think this will feed well into what you were already talking about. Do you or did you experience imposter syndrome as a book coach? And if so, how did you deal with that?
I did, and I still do, to be perfectly honest. And I would say every single book coach that I train and certify tends to feel the same way. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of writers feel imposter syndrome as well. It's just part of the creative process, this idea of who am I to write a book? Who am I to take up space? Who am I to raise my voice and want people to listen to me? And on the book coaching side, that imposter syndrome sounds like, what if I wreck their story? What if I make a suggestion that makes it worse? What if I, don't bring my best to this situation or this writer? So it is something that comes up a lot. And the thing that I always say about being a book coach is the writer is the god of their story. That's what I always say. And the book coach is in charge of the process. We should understand the process of creativity, the process of writing a book, the steps that you have to go through, what a good manuscript looks like at the end, what's good enough to submit to a press so that the press has that good material to work with. So the way that we get there as a professional is we get really good at asking questions. So it's not so much that the book coach has the answers as that we have a process for asking the writer the right questions. And so a good book coach is going to be very curious, and is going to know when to push and when to dig and when to, what to ask the writer when. And if you think about it, imposter syndrome doesn't play a role in that. You can learn how to ask good questions and be a good listener and care about the writer's work. There's nothing impostery about that. So I find that when you focus on the actual skill of being a book coach, it tends to eradicate that feeling of imposter syndrome. Oftentimes people want to be book coaches and they think they can't because, fill in the blank. I can't be a book coach because I don't have a PhD. I don't have an agent myself. I haven't made any money from my own writing, whatever the thing is. But what I always say is that a good book coach is like a good teacher, and you don't have to have those metrics of success to be good at this work. Our most successful book coaches were not published themselves before they launched their book coaching businesses. It's a really different skill, and I'm in the business of teaching people that skill, so I know for sure that it is a teachable skill. So I could talk about imposter syndrome all day long, and for writers, I think it's a really important thing to pay attention to as well. I mean, I'm starting a book my own self right now. I'm about maybe 2 months into a new project, and I feel all this is my will be my 13th book, and I feel all those same things. Like, oh, somebody else has already written this and said it better. Oh, who am I to think that I should ask people to pay attention to me? All those things run through my head as well. And we have to recognize them for what they are, which is just one very loud voice in your head, that there are other voices in there as well to pay attention to, which is, I have something to say. I have a burning desire to write this book and to get it out into the world. I want to be published because I want, whatever, fill in the blank that you want. It could be fame or money, or just to get your foot in the door of this career, or you really have something to say, or you have a story that you're just burning to tell. So to focus in on those other things that can counteract that imposter syndrome.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I mean, that idea and how to deal with imposter syndrome applies to so many things across the board. So obviously it's relevant here, but I think that's great advice, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm excited to get into some more questions. I'm loving these answers. This next question is, I'm a writer and I'd love to be a book coach. What do I do next?
Well, I am a big believer in being trained. The book coaching industry is very new, and it is really in its infancy. It rose up with the changes in the publishing industry that have come about over the last maybe 10 or so years, where a lot of the power is now in the hands of the writer. It used to be that the power was in the hands of the gatekeepers, the agents, and the big traditional publishers. But now you can choose to work with somebody like Atmosphere Press, a really professional, excellent opportunity for you to get your work published and out in the world. You don't have to go through those hoops that you used to have to go through. But the result of that is that we do have the danger of a lot of bad books being published, right? So the answer is that a lot of people in this space are just kind of hanging out a shingle and saying that they're a book coach, and that I think is dangerous for our brand new industry, which is the reason why I started a training and certification process. We have a really rigorous training program. People have to do, it's just like training to become a therapist or licensed in some way. You have to do a certain number of hours of working with writers in order to get certified by us. You have to meet a really high bar. So just I have a real bias because of the work that I'm doing, that you should get trained and that you should hone your skills and you should learn how to do the work of a book coach, to not bring damage to the writers. So many writers have been damaged by, well, I think a lot of writing groups actually do a lot of damage. I see a lot of damage that is done in writing groups. And I think that oftentimes where writing is being taught in academia can do a lot of damage as well. So we're really training people to make sure that you do no harm, that you have compassion and wisdom around how to help a writer. So my answer, I think, to this has to be get trained by somebody who's doing excellent work in this regard. And this is sort of a strange thing to say, but we don't have any competition. We're the only people doing it. So if you're interested, you're probably going to want to check us out. And the place to do that is at bookcoaches.com /coaches is probably the best URL to go to. There's a free training there. You can learn all about it. So I know it sounds a little ridiculous to say the way to do it is to come work with me. I don't have another answer. That's what I got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that point you make about being careful. I mean, it's similar concept, you wouldn't become a therapist without going through training, or you wouldn't become any of these um, roles or positions that are working very closely with someone on something that's probably very personal to them. So I just love that point and to keep that in mind with the integrity of book coaching. This next question, kind of related, actually ties in well. Hi, Jenny. My book has a lot of really sensitive personal material in it, and I don't know what should stay and what should go. How do I pick a book coach or a publisher who would be able to deal with sensitive content?
Well, this is a great question, and it's really a question about you're taking a step from whatever this sensitive material is to you and holding it close to you personally. You're taking a step into sharing it with the world, and that's a really big line to cross for a lot of writers. A lot of writers start out writing very personal things in a journal, or maybe they're writing a draft of whatever, a memoir, a novel, or even a nonfiction book, and they're doing it privately in their own space. And then there comes this moment when they're actually sharing it, with the world. And you want to definitely make sure that you are ready for that, and that you're not going to damage any relationships that you might have, or make any decisions. I mean, I'll give an example. Make any decisions that you're going to regret. So I'll give an example of what I mean. A lot of times people will say, "Oh, I have this really sensitive information. So instead of writing a memoir, I'm going to write a novel, and then I'll get to hide behind this fictionalization, or this, it's not really me." That doesn't work. I'm here to say that that doesn't work. People who come out with novels about very sensitive topics are still having to deal with that material, and that being in the world as a writer. So I'm just want to make sure you understand that the nervousness you might be feeling is super valid. It's a really big moment. And you in terms of finding a publisher, any publisher such as Atmosphere is going to know how to handle that material. They're going to be trained, their editors are going to be trained to be looking at that material with you, and to know um, to how to help you. I mean, what we're talking about now is what I would call bad actors. Are there bad actors out there who are going to encourage you to do something that's harmful to you, or not be in support of you, or make you feel something you don't want to feel around your work? I mean, sure, there are people out there, but it's not Atmosphere. So, I would say, if you're looking at other places, just be sensible about this, meaning if they're red flags, pay attention to those. If you feel weird in your gut about some partnership or promise or something, pay attention to that. And the same thing's going to be true with a book coach or an editor, or anybody that you hire to work on it. You want to make sure that that person is compassionate and understanding and trained to handle this sort of thing. If it's a situation where you're writing about a traumatic event, you probably either want a book coach who's trauma trained, or make sure you're working with the therapist alongside them. So there's a lot of things that you can do to mitigate the fact that you're writing about something sensitive. But one thing that I will say is that there are a lot of books out there about sensitive topics. It's one of the reasons we gravitate to books, is to know what it's like to be a human in the world, to know what it's like to be dealing with difficult topics and difficult things. So it is, for people who work in the industry, it's not unusual. It's odds are probably good that what feels really scary and sensitive to you is not going to be to the professional. I mean, I personally can just tell you that I have worked in my career on books that, the most sensitive topics on the planet, from suicide to murder, to like actual murder, not fictional murder, to actually I've worked with two writers around murder stories, sexual abuse, drug abuse, all the things. So there's a professional will have seen it. So, it's really then just a matter of, are you ready to go out and find somebody, and to trust your gut, and to make sure that the person and the people and the team that you choose to work with are are supporting you and lifting you up and helping you to tell the best story that you can. That's what you want to be looking for.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a tough journey and it's going to be tough no matter what. But especially so if you've got a lot of that type of content. So it's really important to make sure you're working with someone who can support you through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this next question is, as a book coach, how do you ensure that you communicate your suggestions without sounding rude?
Oh, well, the way is to remember that it's not my story. I don't know what's right for the author. I don't know what is going to be the best path for them. So I'm not. I like to think that I'm not rude, and that I train my coaches not to be rude because we're not giving our opinion. We're giving evidence-based feedback for what is working and what is not working. One thing that new writers may not understand is that there are subjective things about writing that are you can get right or you can get wrong. There are also objective things about writing that are what the author is choosing to do, or the structure that they're choosing to use, or the point of view that they've chosen to um, tell their story through. A million choices that are objective, but there are a lot of subjective things that a trained professional can look at and say, this is demonstrably not correct. And if I can give evidence for that, and I'm not just talking about grammar, I'm talking about things. Just for example, in fiction, the idea of head hopping, of hopping from narrator to narrator, and maybe the reader can't follow that. We don't know where we are in time or space. It's very disconcerting to the reader. That's something that is an evidence-based thing that's problematic for the reader. So if I'm talking about that, I'm not just saying you've made a bad choice on your on your bad narrative choice. I'm saying I want to share with you what the experience of the reader is like here, and I want to point out to you that you've been in 7 different characters' heads over the last 5 pages. So let's look at that and see, did you know you were doing that? Why were you doing that? And what choice can you make to improve that? So it's going to be evidence-based. And in my mind, if I'm dealing with the evidence and I'm asking the writer what they want to do in order to address that situation, there's no room to be rude. If somebody ever is working with your work and you feel that they're being rude, don't work with them. That's not okay. So hopefully that answers that.
Yes, I just want to touch on that point again. Really, any time that you feel like your work is not being treated with respect, it's absolutely within your power to not have to work with that person. So I hope that artists and writers feel empowered to do so or to proceed accordingly. This next question is, how do you go from working with a book coach to working with atmosphere or working with a publisher?
So the book coach is going to help you get ready to submit to Atmosphere. They're going to help you make sure that your manuscript is in great shape so that Atmosphere Press and their team can get that work. They can see where it's going to fit in the marketplace. They know exactly how they're going to position it and work with you to get it out there. And their people are going to be ready to pick it up and run with it. There's so many steps that happen after you submit to a publisher to make the work great. I happen to be working with a client at this exact moment who has her final, what's called final pass pages, ready to go to a publisher. So I've been walking with her step by step through this whole thing, and there's just a lot that happens that atmosphere is going to do, and you want to be ready with the content of your book in excellent shape so that they can then do what they do best to help get it into publishable shape. So a book coach is going to help you get ready and also know when the moment is. If you're, like I said before, procrastinating, they're going to help you move forward and make that submission. And if you're really not ready, if you're jumping the gun, they're going to help you to do what you need to do to get ready. So that line of readiness is a place where a book coach does a lot of work and can be really valuable.
Yes, definitely. I think it's great to have as many points of input and feedback, and that transition period can be really smoothed out. So definitely beneficial to have multiple voices on the book. This question is, how do you fight with procrastination or laziness or a lack of motivation to work on your book? I don't like deadlines. I just find myself putting everything off for later.
It's a great question. So I find that procrastination and laziness is usually covering up something else. So it's usually covering up some kind of fear, or it's covering up the fact that you don't actually know what your story is about yet, or your book, whichever it is. I just came through a period of time of vast procrastination, like years of procrastination on this book that I'm working on right now. And there were two things that procrastination was masking, and one of them was fear. I was putting a lot of expectation on myself on this book, for what I wanted it to do and to be and how exactly I wanted it to go. And that was even before I started writing. I was putting all this expectation on it. And then the other thing that it was masking was I really didn't know what I wanted to write. I just had a vague idea, and vagueness is the enemy of excellence. So oftentimes, if you're putting off doing something, or you're dreading deadlines, or you're not moving forward, or you're doing the laundry instead of writing, or you know making all of these other choices instead of putting your energy on your book, there's often something else going on, and that is another time when a book coach can actually be enormously effective, or a therapist, one of the two. A therapist is going to be dealing with any life things that you might have. A book coach is going to deal with the work itself. Not We're not therapists, but we can help with that sort of thing. I always find that when you get clarity about what you're really doing, what is your story really about? Why are you sharing this memoir? What is if you're writing memoir, what is your motivation for that? What do you hope to achieve? What do you want your readers to feel or to know or to believe? And on the nonfiction side, again, who are you trying to teach? What are you trying to teach them? To get crystal clear on those things is oftentimes the motivation. And that's what happened to me. I actually hired one of my own book coaches to help me get clear on exactly what I was trying to do. And once I did, I was able to land on a structure that I really loved, and that just opened the doors to my getting past that procrastination. So I believe that procrastination and laziness are not their own thing. They're the symptom of some other thing. So you might do some journaling about what you think is holding you back.
Yeah, it can be really helpful to connect with that part of yourself and, make sure that you are um, keeping yourself accountable and working on the things that will ultimately make you the happiest. But at this point, I just want to say, although that's all the questions we have time for in this panel, if you have a question that wasn't answered, please do check, I'm sorry, please stick around for more panels later today. And also, we've got more panels tomorrow. And you can also check out Atmosphere Press's YouTube channel for previous live sessions with publishing professionals. That being said, I do also want to say thank you so much to Jennie Nash for sharing your background and your initiative, your experiences, so much knowledge and advice with us today. And thank you, of course, to everyone for being here in the attendance and for sharing these thoughtful questions. The next session that we'll be hosting today will be a joint panel featuring the past winners of the Playa Flamingo Writing Residency and the Atmosphere Press Book of the Year Award. We'll be giving away more exclusives in the next panel, and it'll be a great opportunity to learn more about what you can get out of Atmosphere Press totally for free. To rejoin the webinar for the next panel, just as with the previous sessions, you can click on the same link you clicked to join the webinar for this panel. The next panel will begin shortly, so while you're in the digital waiting room, you can enjoy excerpts from the audiobook What If You're Right by Emily Colwell. Thank you again to this panel's sponsor, the Launchpad. That's our Atmosphere Press newsletter, so you can check that out to stay up to date on everything happening with the press. And I am so happy to announce this panel's giveaway winner. The winner of a free digital copy of Jennie's book, Read Books All Day and Get Paid for It, The Business of Book Coaching, is Michelle Logman. And all attendees will receive a download of the Business of Book Coaching Startup Kit, a 40-page guide to get you started book coaching. Please look out for an email from Atmosphere this week about arranging the delivery of your prizes. And in the meantime, we look forward to seeing all of you in the next panel.